Thank you for your return. So now that we've finished our first goal area and you have a sort of a lay of the land on what sorts of things we're looking for, we can go ahead and move on. Our next goal area was examinations. So again, if you see something egregious here that you'd like to fix or amend, let me know. Otherwise, we can get started. Like the fair, valid, sort of touches on the concept that we are going to try to do this in a balanced and non-discriminatory in any way. So shall we go ahead and move on? All right, wonderful. So again, this is a repeat of the 4 different questions that we asked in the survey and the input that people had about issues in general on DEI. So we can keep those in mind. And you do have that handout. So the first item that's been completed and is too far along to amend is to the alternate competency verification during states of emergency. So it's a fairly limited term item, but we're going to skip ahead because it's too late to mess with it. But we've got this one that's in process, evaluating the exam to prevent barriers. Boy, you guys had your mind on DEI before we even started officially pushing it. Good for you.
I would just point out for the members that in the technically speaking, the way the goal presently reads is not, I guess, exactly accurate. There is no exam requirement for opticianry, right? The goal 2.1 says that. Consider the feasibility of developing a state law exam for opticians. So the overarching goal, I don't know if we want to look at that or not. But then counterintuitively, to the point I just made, a licensing exam requirement could be a barrier to licensure. So something to think about.
Okay. So were you saying that you might have some room to talk about the goal statement, or were you talking about objective 2.3 or 2.1?
I was talking about both, sorry.
Okay.
The goal itself talks about having a fair, valid, legally defensible exam process to ensure only qualified and competent individuals are licensed or registered to provide optometric or opticianry services. There is no
good for you. All right.
exam requirement for opticianry. And that's exactly what 2.1 says, right? So we have an opportunity in this process, if we'd like here, to make a change to the goal if we want to make it maybe more accurate. We don't have to. But I also just wanted to kind of prompt the members to think about that in terms of barriers to licensure, that an exam requirement itself could also be viewed as one.
I have a question about when this initial goal was created. Was there a board goal at the time to create such an exam?
Several of these items, remember, Klepa, are sort of tied together. So in another goal that we will get to today, we talk about occupational analysis for opticianry as being a goal and securing funding to perform that. At our prior meeting in August, we received that exact occupational analysis and report. So at the time this overall strategic plan was created, I believe the board adopted it in November of 2020. I think it was not necessarily an expectation that we work toward that, but that we research, explore. That was the expectation. So where we left that part of the conversation, the occupational analysis for opticianry folks, following our last meeting, was to continue to study and review that and look into that. We didn't have a very if the solid folks don't mind me saying, a very robust response rate in the sample for that survey. And so it was very hard to, I think, make decisions as a board probably pursuant to that. So lots of these specific goals, and 2.1 is an example of one of these, are tied to other items within our strategic plan, some of those items have been either completed, like the scope of practice and occupational analysis, and or we're continuing to research, explore them. So there has never been, as far as I'm aware, a state exam in California for opticianry.
Just to further explore that point, does it exist in other states?
I
If
don't
any.
know. Only about half of the country licenses via a state board or bureau opticians. I'm not familiar with how those other states perform that function.
Okay.
The way the law presently works for opticianry is to qualify for that license in California, you do take an exam. It's not our exam. It's not a California exam. And the specific goal here is to develop a state law exam, much like the CLRE that we have for optometry.
I don't know if we're in a position to really go down that road completely right now as to whether it's still a good idea or not, but as a goal, it seems reasonable to continue to study that, and to look towards such a test in the future might be a reasonable thing to leave in that goal for exactly that reason, to see if it's something we do want to adopt at some point.
Right.
Oh, this is Member Linden. Just want to say that, yeah, I completely agree. I think that the current examination requirements could pose a significant barrier to licensure because the passage rates for the exam that we're currently using now are very low. And so I think continuing to explore that could be helpful.
For opticianry or both of them? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. So we'll go ahead and put a placeholder to continue working, thinking, exploring.
Did we still want to strike through it in the goal area?
Yeah, how do you all feel about pulling it off the main goal definition?
My thought would be to leave it in, since it's just a goal and we're still exploring.
So I'm sorry, I had a little trouble hearing. Leave it in?
Member Kleppa was
Yes.
saying to leave it in, it's still probably an appropriate goal.
That's right.
And as you said, Greg, there is an exam. It's not the state's exam.
Correct.
But there is some, okay,
Correct.
all right.
Member Garcia, but as a point of clarification, that ABO exam is not necessarily a state law exam. It's more of a skills, knowledge type of test.
Correct.
Right, right. Okay, great. So, and yeah, that sounds good. So as we started looking at 2.3 with evaluating the exams used, are you comfortable with leaving this as is? I assume it looked pretty comprehensive and DEI friendly.
Yeah.
Great. All right. So then the next one was the optician exam. Is there anything you wanted to perhaps note as far as it's a positive thing, but do you want to take a look at the fees and is there anything you want to codify in this way, or shall we just kind of leave those as notes for the staff to keep in mind in action planning?
Well, I would just point out is that if you go down the route of requiring a state exam for opticians, there would be a fee associated with that. And so yes, that should be part of how we consider that and evaluate that going forward. The CLRE exam fee for optometrists presently is $279. that's a higher fee than what the initial application fee presently is for opticianry. So we should absolutely be mindful as we consider the feasibility of developing such an exam, the costs of what that exam might be, as it would be borne by the people having to take it.
So no other edits to 2.1? Correct? Okay, great. 2.2. Reimagine the exam processes. And basically, this would sort of cover what we hope will happen if in a thoughtful review. Did you want to specifically call out any DEI or DEIB aspects? Or you think just a note to staff that we're going to be thoughtfully considering DEI as a part of this? Would that be adequate? Okay. So just no changes in the objective, just looking at the staff notes. Okay.
I would say yes. And I think, so to that point, we're on 2.2, reimagine the exam process. Part of what happens with our CLRE is periodic exam development, if you will. The questions change. They're not the same, right? And how do they change? Pursuant to a process that involves subject matter experts. It would be helpful in the context of this conversation with DEI if those considerations were given for those experts reviewing the exam, right? The experts, the SMEs, should be diverse. They shouldn't all be, from one certain population group over another. So as we reimagine those processes, as we are doing our sort of existing process, right, of exam development and continual development, I think that would be very important that the folks involved in that appropriately reflect the diversity.
Great point. Thank you, Elizabeth, for keeping that note so we don't lose track of that. And then there was the possibility of creating a new objective. Did we want to talk about specifically that, or is that, Greg, did you say that was covered in another goal area, the opticianry exam?
It's mentioned, I think, elsewhere. But I think it's fine to continue to consider it.
Okay, and consider the DEI repercussions or considerations involved in requiring one, involved in the fees and the method in which those are charged?
I think all of it. Yeah, I think, when you're developing a state law exam requirement is quite serious, right? It basically becomes the first hurdle that you have to get over to get what you want, which is the license. So we should consider all of those things: fees, all of the DEI aspects, all of it.
Right.
Sorry, I wanted to make sure. Is it this one, the 2.1?
So a new one might be under laws and regs.
My question is, do you all want to create a new objective based on this exam, or is it already addressed in another objective and we just need to add notes to it?
From my perspective, I think it's just adding notes.
Okay. Okay. So no new objective here. Okay, great.
All right. Anything else that comes to mind with the examination goal area? Anything anyone thinks got left out? All right. Dr. Wong, shall we open for public comment on this goal area?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Any public comment in the room? Wonderful.
Okay. So once again, we are here to support you and talking about this exam. The benefit is for opticians and optometric assistants to understand each other as we talk and protect consumers. There's so many gaps in conversations, just even exchanging a prescription. So they don't understand, they're afraid to release prescriptions. So I think developing something like this would be great. And to let you know, at least the ABO exam, if our students do take our courses, we're experiencing a 90% passing rate. So we have increased it. So there are solutions. And I wouldn't worry about the fees. We can talk about that. It's totally something that we can support you with. Okay, thank you.
And then WebEx moderator, did you want to ask for public comment online?
As a moderator and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
I did have one question, and I don't know if this is the right time to bring it up or maybe later at the meeting. This is for our executive director. As far as the examinations go for optometrists, do we keep track of passage rates and trends regarding passage rates on the exam?
Yes, we keep track of passage rates and report them annually.
Okay, so that's something we already do then. That
Yes.
satisfies my curiosity. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, moving on to goal area 3. Laws and regulations. Take a moment to review the definition. Let us know if there are any revisions. No revisions to the definition here. Nope. Okay, moving on to, and again, the handout you have in front of you. 3.2 has already been completed, so no need for revising that one. Moving on to the next one. 3.3 is in process, but is open to revision. So take a moment to look at this objective and let us know if there are any changes that you would like to make. No change. Go ahead.
This is Member Bragg. The only suggestion I would have is maybe increase access to affordable care.
Okay. To increase access to affordable care while maintaining a world-class standard. Other board members, how do you all feel with that change?
I like it.
Thank you. Head nods, yes. Any additional revisions to this objective? No?
Member Garcia, I think affordable care is very important, but I also think access to care in general is equally important or more important. So in California, we have an access to eye care issue, specifically to Medi-Cal population. So I don't want to lose sight of that either, because that sort of legislation may be coming. So affordable care is important, but I think access to care, to eye care, is also important.
And with that comment, how would you like us to revise the definition?
And just as a side note, there are some who might question whether it is the board's role to keep an eye on affordability or whether the access issue is your primary role. So that's a decision for the board to make.
As Member Garcia, I think access to care is broad enough to include the affordability aspect as well, something that we should all keep in mind.
This is Dr. Wong. I agree with Dr. Garcia. I think just access to care, because that's one of the things that we've been focused on, which is one of the reasons why we also are talking about mobile clinics as well. So I think access to care.
Okay, board members, how do you all feel about striking the affordable and keeping access to care? Yes? Yes, head nods, okay. So just keeping access to care. Okay, any additional revisions? Any additional discussion? Okay, moving on to the next objective. This objectives have not yet been started, so any revisions you would like to make?
Members, this is an example of what I was mentioning earlier about how some of these goals are connected and tied across various items. 3.1 is talking about new opticianry statutes and regulations, and then talks about the occupational analysis, right? Which we just were speaking about in a prior item.
And if you don't have any revisions for the objective itself, keep in mind we do take notes for the action planning if there's anything you would like the executive officer and managers to consider when developing or revising that action plan they have in place.
Yeah.
No?
I have, sorry, Member Klepper here. I have one point I thought I'd raise. My understanding from a prior discussion with the executive director is there may be pending statutes in this area that have not yet been adopted. Is that still the case?
Could, Member Club, I had a hard time catching the last part. Could you say that again? I thought I heard you say something about statutes that haven't been pursued.
No, statutes or regulations that are pending but have not yet been enacted. Is that still correct?
As it pertains to 3.1, partially. As we will talk in a further item today, one of we're pursuing as a board a fee regulation, and one of the existing board-approved regulations did encompass that fee for opticians. It also included a bunch of other things. We separated that fee component from that regulation package into our overall fee package involving both optometry and opticianry. So yes, there are some aspects that speak to 3.1 that are in progress that haven't been completed. There are other aspects to 3.1 for which we are presently just studying, researching, exploring, and that has to do more with the occupational analysis related to the the 3 license types on opticianry that went through that process.
Okay. Am I mistaken? Were there not some sort of disciplinary regulations that were also pending, or did I misunderstand?
Not a misunderstanding. That's also on our item for later today.
Okay.
But that is not something that comes out of using data from occupational analyses.
No, I understand. My only thought then in relation to the advocation for these things which are pending and therefore hopefully will be adopted, and this is a discussion I know I've had with the executive director in the past, is to potentially post that on the website to at least guide opticians on what's coming, rather than surprising them with what is enacted. It's not a direct outflow from this particular objective, but I thought it was something I would raise here because, as noted, notes are being taken as part of an action plan, and I thought this is something that should be on the table in that regard.
Member Klubba, just so you know, as it pertains specifically to those disciplinary guidelines that you're referring to, those can be found on our website because the board, pursuant to a board meeting action, directed staff to initiate that rulemaking. So all of those materials are published on the website on that board meeting item. I think it was in 2019. I can't remember off the top of my head, but those items do exist published on our website.
And board members, we are revising this objective, but if you have an idea for a new objective, we can make note on a new slide if there's any outreach, and we can move that to the outreach as well in terms of any of the communications board member Klepp is referring to. Any new objectives you would like to develop? No?
Yeah, member Sue here. I wasn't sure which section this will fall under, but I was thinking about where do we implement child vision testing? Because right now, currently, it's not required unless a parent or a doctor notice something.
Okay, we will take a note of that and we'll come right back to it. We'll just finish revising this objective. Thank you. And we'll come back. Thank you. And for this objective, any revisions, any further discussion, or should we move forward? No? Okay, move forward. 3.4 hasn't been started yet as well. Is there anything you would like to change here? Would the fees present any economic barriers?
I would just share, I think it's particularly important that we, at the staff level, continue to explore how to synchronize the FNPs. As especially the licensees of this board know, your license is issued for 2 years and expires at the end of the month, 2 years from when it was issued. So all licenses, for example, that were issued today on December 8th would expire December 31st of 2025. Many of our licensees also have what's called a statement of licensure, which is a statement of their licensure for other locations that they practice at that is not their main location. And those SOLs, statement of licensures, are synchronized to the expiration date of the overall optometrist license. Fictitious name permits, which is another permit that many licensed ODs will seek, is not synchronized and tied to either of those other licenses, SOL or the overall license. Instead, by regulation, they all expire on January 31st of every year. They're only valid for essentially 1 year or less. Again, this is in regulation, not in statute, so that provides a specific pathway to address that. But I just thought I would share that, especially for our newer members of the board. Additionally, sunset review, I think in this item is talking both about the timing of the strategic plan process that the board went through at that time, as well as looking toward the future. So this strat plan, the current strat plan, was adopted by the board in November of 2020. The board shortly thereafter, I believe, went through sunset review. So I believe that specific language in this goal is both talking about to that imminent process that happened a few years ago, sunset review. As many here know, we are going to be entering into sunset review in the future. We will be writing our sunset review report next year in 2024 and submitting it to the legislature at the end of next year. So I just think that additional context for especially our newer members might be helpful.
You, any revisions, any questions or discussions, board members? No? Okay, shall we move on to the next objective? Also haven't yet been started, 3.5. Any revisions in terms of DEI? Any specific notes for action plan? Anything you would like for board members, is there anything you would like the executive officer management to keep in mind when executing this objective?
I would just point out for the members that, again, I think we all, as a department, saw this year the importance of paying attention to federal law with respect to the action that President Biden took enacting or signing into law the Federal Service Member Relief Act. So I think sort of my sense, and being in lots of conversations regarding that over the past several months, that I think lots of folks in the department are putting a closer eye on things happening at the federal level.
Okay, if there are no further revisions, we can open up for new objectives, and we do already have one placeholder here, child vision. For child vision, why address it, or what is your desired outcome?
Yeah, member Sue here. Yeah, my objective is so kids at a certain age get tested, um, regardless of if there's any issues developing. Um, I mean, I found out about this. I thought they were mandatory testing, but in reality, there isn't. I was told by the doctor that it doesn't require unless a parent ask the doctor to do a test.
Okay, so under why address it, and if we can throw in, oh, there you go. Thank you, desired outcome.
I think maybe some of the professional members of the board might be able to speak maybe a little bit more detail on this. I think it's my understanding that to the extent any testing does happen for children, it often happens or sometimes happens in schools. And that when that testing occurs, it may be more around like the third grade level. Now, we're the Board of Optometry, and education is not our specialty, but I think most of us are probably aware that the third grade year is very important. And if you're not reading at grade level or performing mathematics at grade level by third grade, it's very difficult to ever catch up later on in life. So I think what Member Sue might be getting at is an eye toward maybe being a mandate or some type of requirement that testing happen earlier for children, so that it's not at third grade or some later point when it might be too late to address the problem. We should know that if a child is not able to read, we should find out before third grade.
This sounds like a new objective.
So, Member Sue, just a question. Are you talking about you want to require mandatory vision screenings in elementary schools, like starting in kindergarten? Or are you talking about requiring mandatory testing prior to the entrance of elementary schools, similar to dental exams and screenings that a lot of the school districts require?
Yeah, I would think first grade, kindergarten would be a appropriate time because I started noticing my daughter, who's at first grade now, and with noticing that she's, having symptoms of nearsightedness. So, you know, um, we took her to the doctor, we had it tested, and, basically the doctor saying that it's not confirmed. But, some of the issue that we'd like to know ahead of time instead of waiting until third grade, I think that's too late.
So I guess my question is, are we talking about uh, doing some kind of mandate that schools do some kind of mandatory vision screening or testing at the schools? Or is it something testing that would occur outside of the schools, similar to dental screenings or dental exams prior to children entering elementary school, starting?
I think either or, I mean, I don't have any particular preference to that. Yeah.
Member Garcia, I think it's important that we define an exam versus a screening because they are two very different things. So vision screenings do happen in schools and it's mandated. I think the question is an eye exam, which is COA has attempted to do that in the past. The challenge is funding. Who's going to pay for these mandated eye exams for every child in California? So those attempts have been made, and I don't think there's anything pending now, but I think that's a good goal. But it's challenging because of the funding.
So in terms of a new objectives, in listening to the discussions, should this be something to explore and not necessarily jump into and create? Okay. So did we capture everything correctly on the screen here? Something to draft a new objective on?
I think explore is appropriate, yeah.
Thank you. Any addition? Go ahead, please.
This is Member Linden. I feel like it kind of goes back to Stacy's comment about affordable access to care or care for, vulnerable populations like children or, underserved populations. I think it's hard because, we operate as a board and we have certain things that are more directly within our control. And then there are other objectives out there that I think we as a board all share, but it's hard to kind of identify how do we put that as part of our strategic plan when it's something that has to do with perhaps reimbursement rates or what does Medi-Cal require or what are the schools going to require. So I don't know if there's a way to kind of capture, that we really do want to focus on all these different aspects, increasing access to care. But to do so in a way that we can translate into something that the board can do. I don't know if it's stating that we want to support any state and federal efforts that would promote these objectives or trying to work with groups or other departments that could, pursue these objectives as well. I think it's hard to see how we can make this actionable.
You're saying it's hard to see how to make this specific objective actionable?
Yeah, and just kind of the objectives like that. I think, just increasing access to care when, we're somewhat limited in that sense, but I think we all really do want to pursue that as a goal.
Okay. So question, would you like to keep this objective knowing that it's just an explore objective and perhaps add another objective to, and this may be very vague and broad, but just to address what you mentioned, to support affordable healthcare initiatives? Is that something you would like to see as an objective? Board members, how do you all feel? Is to be hand in hand with this objective as well?
Yes, Member Pruitt. I was just thinking that I don't want to lose the importance of children vision screening, but I mean, kind of in line with the thought of keeping in mind of all vulnerable populations, maybe in a broad sense, as far as an objective, saying that we're aiming to increase the equity in vision care.
Okay, so this current objective, increasing the equity, if we can add increasing equity. Would you like it in the same objective? So making this objective a little bit broader, not a new objective, correct?
There may be a way to do what Member Pruitt just suggested in 3.3 and say, for example, to increase equity and access to, I think there may be a way to wordsmith 3.3. I mean, 3.3 is already talking about current and emerging methods, opportunities, technology. It's pretty broad, right? It does list at the end a few examples like scope of practice, delegation of authority, telemedicine. We could certainly add other examples to that list there. But to the equity point, we could wordsmith that, I think, to say, and technology to increase equity and access to care.
So adding the word equity, it already has the word access there, and taking the idea of the Children Vision Initiative and putting that as an action item for this objective? Yes? Okay, and if we can just take the notes.
And member Linden and other members, just on the child vision piece, I think this was something that our board looked at a few years ago as well. On our homepage, we have a video regarding child vision screenings, a YouTube video. I can't remember with the date when that video was produced, but I think it was a couple years ago. I think it was in the context a couple years ago of that overall Medi-Cal conversation. But I don't think we've done a whole lot, especially on the outreach in the last few years on that piece. So again, as I said in other areas, I think a lot of these goals and issues sort of cross-pollinate into other goals and areas. And I think this is an example of one, where one thing that we can do is outreach, right? And we can put that message out there about the importance of not waiting to third grade, getting it in kindergarten. We don't have to have law to encourage that.
And just a second, Executive Officer Pruden, there was a bill that was up for mandatory vision exams, children vision exams, prior to entrance of elementary school, probably about 5 years ago now. And it unfortunately was defeated. So, but children vision has always been something that the board has supported, and we definitely supported that bill, and we're hoping for passage, but it didn't happen.
Thank you. So we added equity, so access and equity to care in the the revision of this objective. And then moving on to the slide where we had the specific ideas, we won't create a new objective out of this, but we will leave it for our notes for the action planning of the 3.3. And also the next row, increase equity and vision and support affordable care, that goes up with the first row. So knowing that this is not an objective, this is an action item for 3.3. Are there any new objectives you would like to add to this goal area? No? Should we open up to public comment? Okay. Public comment in the room? No? Online? Moderator, if we can please open up for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Now we will move on to the next goal area, which is enforcement, and we'll display it here in just a moment. And the same drill with the definition. Looking at the definition, would you like to make any refinements to it?
I think I would like to propose we do something with the word consumers. Our job protecting the health and safety is broader than just consumers, right? A patient would be a consumer, but they might be a minor, for example, and their parent is who is filing the complaint on their behalf, just as an example. And in the context of the equity and the DEI conversation that we're having, consumers is very narrowly focused on somebody who purchases something, somebody who buys a service or accesses a service. It doesn't seem to encompass all people. Now, the governor's executive order vision is a California for all. So one way to change the word consumers to account for that could be simply by saying protects the health and safety of all Californians. That would seem to me to be more encompassing than consumers. But that was just a thought I had.
How about we would like to protect our Nevadans too when they come get their eye exams. So how about all individuals?
Fine with it.
Member Garcia, just a question. Consumers seems like it's in a lot of language. Would that
Yes.
be affected? Would that affect a lot of other areas where consumers is used, including our mission statement?
That's a fair point, right? In the mission statement, it says California consumers.
Question, if someone reads all individuals, will they get confused? Is it individuals only here in California receiving services from California licensees? I see the point of making it broader, not saying only Californians, because it will leave out people coming in. But also, does this make it too broad to the point where it's any individual in United States? Or is it implicit that, well, this is the California State Optometry Boards, we're only talking about California?
I hear what you're saying, except I think to Member Bragg's point, we aren't just talking about California, right? One of our license types on opticianry, for example, is a non-resident license type, non-resident ophthalmic lens dispenser. They are located out of California and providing their services to Californians, right? And so we enforce and protect a broader sense of health and safety in that aspect.
Okay, so with that in mind, leaving this as in all individuals, do you all agree with the change? Are you interested in updating your mission statement?
But I started.
Yeah, and Member Garcia again, I think it's in a lot of different language and not just the mission statement. That just stuck in my mind. But I think consumers has been used for so long that we'd really have to go through everything and make it line up if we did that.
Should that be an objective for outreach?
And again, I wanted to bog us down here. It was just, again, it was in the context of the DEI focus and being inclusive and all of those things. Consumers is a niche in that regard, right? It's a very specific, to me at least, very specific population of people. So, I think somebody had said earlier about hills to die on. Not a hill for me to die on.
Also, I would note that you guys are the California board, so your jurisdiction is California, and people coming into California could be considered California consumers.
Okay, so with that discussion, would you like to make a change to your mission statement or move forward and?
Apologies, not only the mission statement, do you want to include or discard the change to the enforcement goal definition?
I guess my proposal for the board would be to deal with the word consumer here in goal 4, and then that would mean we would need to do it probably in the mission. One way to do that would just be to say the safety of Californians or all Californians. all people in California. I don't, I don't know. It might make sense just to leave it the way it is. We could get stuck in wordsmith.
Okay, so leave it with consumers for now. Okay. How do you all feel? Leaving
I'd
it as
agree with that.
consumers?
Member Garcia, I would propose to leave it as consumers.
Leave it,
Because it follows everything else in all of
Correct.
the
Yeah.
other sections. So leave as consumers.
okay, so we'll leave as consumers if no one else has any oppositions or discussions. And we'll move, oh, any other revisions besides the current discussion? No? Moving on to the first objective here. No objectives have been completed. There is this one in process 4.1. Any revisions you would like to make?
Just a comment for the members on some of these items, and this is an example here. When you hear Elizabeth say, not yet completed, that doesn't mean that nothing's been done on it. Just to be clear, this is something that is ongoing, right? As I think the item kind of suggests, right? Review the communication process and standard practices. This sort of has to be ongoing because laws change, other things change, and so the communication that we provide and what is the standard may well change. So I just wanted to be clear that the reason why these things are on here is because they're in process and sort of the way I view them, sort of naturally in process, sort of continuously.
Any revisions to the objective, the wording? No? Any DEI language, anything like that, barriers? No? Okay. Moving on to the next objective. Any revisions for this one? Again, it doesn't necessarily have to be any revisions to the objective itself. If you have any ideas for the action, how this objective is going to be executed in terms of language, experience, for the licensees or anything?
And I did note, I think this was related to board member onboarding. And so the difference, keeping in mind the difference between a public member who has no vocabulary to back up and how much coaching that person would need. And it's possible that our public members can speak here of how smooth was the learning process in becoming a board member for a very specific board with some very specific language. But those also can be just generalized notes for the, board staff to keep in mind as they implement this.
Okay, no revisions. Shall we move on to the next objective?
That's it.
I mean, no additional objectives. Any new objectives you would like to create based on the environmental scan, the DEI training videos?
This is Member Kleppa. I have a question regarding how enforcement is done. When there are hearings, should a complaint be made and a hearing against a licensee is made, are there normally translators provided for the general public to participate and understand what's occurring?
I think I heard the question from you, Member Kleppa, as during a disciplinary hearing, are there translators provided for members of the public to follow along and understand what's going on? Is that a fair summation of your question?
Yes.
I don't know the answer to that question. I'm kind of looking over at legal counsel for any experience they might have in participating in these disciplinary decisions where a translator might be provided.
Member Kleppa, could you repeat the question? I had some difficulty hearing you.
Well, it was exactly what the executive director summarized. I guess the first part of it is, are these hearings open to the public? And the second part is, if they are, and a public member requests a translator, are they provided for free?
So generally the hearings are open to the public. I'm trying to think if there's any, I can't off the top of my head think of any closed sessions materials that would be available there. That being said, I would be happy to look into more detail and get back to you. Michelle, do you know about any translation materials that DCA provides?
I don't know that DCA would be providing the translator. I believe it would be the Office of Administrative Hearings that would be providing the translators. And I think that's just done automatically if a witness needs it.
Okay, well, then that's the answer. So that translation is available for anyone who asks for it so they could understand what's occurring at a hearing, especially a complainant who maybe caused the particular process to begin. And what you're telling me, that already exists, so then we don't have to address it further, right?
I think that's right. We can certainly do a little bit more research. I can work with counsel on that to, really pin down the answer to that question. But I think we're all on the sort of same page here.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, and we captured that in the notes. Any new objectives you would like to add under enforcement?
This is Member Linden. I'm trying to think of how something could be phrased and if it's really more of an objective or more of an action item. But I know in recent years, at the state level, there's been some legislation to kind of generally remove barriers to entry across all licensure categories, by not considering, certain past criminal offenses, things like that. So I feel like I would support something that kind of encourages keeping with that spirit and intent, to if there are certain offenses that might be a barrier to entry, or even if it's, something that a current licensee has, if they're not related to the profession, if they're nonviolent and whatever it is, kind of in keeping with that spirit, can we try to not let those instances prevent or pose a barrier to licensure, continued licensure, or create an undue hardship on some licensees?
So we captured that. Consideration of certain past offenses which are not related to the profession in current or within the process. Continual licensure. That doesn't impact the continual licensure. So I'm assuming like enforcement cases don't consider.
Yeah, I think it's just generally, if we can reduce barriers to entry or reduce undue hardships on licensees or potential licensees, to the extent that it still protects, obviously, health and safety of consumers.
And so I can actually go ahead and move this up to the licensing if you'd like, or is this more specifically in enforcement?
It may be outreach. I don't know. Because I keep thinking, Member Linden, so what you're talking about was AB 2138 from a couple years ago, and it dealt with Business and Profession Code Section 480. This is the substantially related criteria. And it's otherwise known as, ban the box, at the 7-year look back. It has sort of various names that people refer to it as. One of the things that we did this year in regards to that, this was a bill that was passed 5 years ago, was to produce a FAQ for applicants, licensees, the members of the public on all of these things. So we get lots of questions about DUIs and certain types of criminal convictions and what they might mean for, your licensure ability. And so we put together a FAQ that we disseminated regarding all of that, trying to help people sort of navigate those waters. And so that's why it sort of struck me as maybe a more of an outreach type of item. And I don't know if that would look like, developing materials for, I don't know how to wordsmith it, but
I think from the barrier to entry into the profession, that definitely seems like an outreach thing so that people are aware.
Yeah.
I think specifically under enforcement, though, I think I'm thinking more about situations where perhaps there's a licensee who is subject to disciplinary action, and seeing whether, you know, during that enforcement process, you know, depending on it, I guess, is there, yeah, it has to, I think that's what I'm thinking of specifically, more when it's during the enforcement process, you know, are there ways to reduce undue hardships on licensees when, you know, certain offenses might not be, you know, likely to cause harm or anything or something like that.
Okay, so not outreach, not licensing, if we can make sure to capture that under enforcement, please. And did you have a response or did management want to respond to that? Or should it just be added as an objective to explore?
Yeah, I'm good with that, just being an explorer for disciplinary guideline purposes.
So we're under enforcement, consideration of certain past offenses which are not related to the profession, substantiation criteria, explore ways to reduce undue hardships during enforcement process, implement publicized process of which items to consider. Would it publicize items to consider, or is that an internal enforcement process that really isn't communicated to the public? I think in terms
I
of,
think it seems kind of like a two-pronged. I think for barriers to entry or licensure, that sounds like that would be more under the outreach criteria to make sure that people know that they can apply for licensure even if they do have certain past offenses.
okay,
And I think under the enforcement process, maybe it's just explore, you know, explore disciplinary guidelines to ensure that there are no, you know, undue burdens that would otherwise not affect health and safety of consumers or something like that.
got it, thank you. So we will copy and paste the outreach into the outreach goal area and keep the rest here. Board members, any discussion, any questions, any comments, or management, executive officer?
And is there a component of this which would also go into licensing, or you think the publicizing the existing criteria is adequate?
I think it's probably adequate. The technical answer to your question is maybe, because you can apply and present with discipline or conviction history. So in that context, it involves licensing. They naturally cross over, both enforcement and licensing. But I think it's appropriate to not confuse it in that way.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is just leave it the appropriate here in enforcement and then the rest in outreach. And if we captured that correctly and there's no additional revisions to this idea, are there any additional objectives you would like to add? Should we open for public comment?
Yes.
Okay, public comment here in person? No? Online? Moderator, if we can please open up for public comment?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So now I will pass it over. Would you like to move on to the next goal area? Did you want to take a lunch break? We have 2 more goal areas to go, which is outreach and organizational effectiveness.
If it's okay with you and the board, we have staff who has left about 10 or so minutes ago to go pick up lunch for those who ordered it. I'm okay with starting. I don't think we'll finish the next one by the time lunch arrives, which could be any moment. But I think we should go ahead and start. And then I would assume we could pause wherever we need to and then do our break and come back.
Sounds good. All right, so we are on goal 5. 1 second here. Share our material on the screen. All right, so outreach, is there any adjustment to the goal area definition? Any thought about diversely or inclusively communicating, educating? It's moderately implied, I guess. Okay, seeing some nods that it's pretty much implied that we're going to do this in a egalitarian, diverse way. All right. So the outreach items that have been completed, we've got a couple of those. A few of those. Great, good. So in process, or
Could you go back real quick to the last slide? Okay. I just noticed a typo in my board meeting materials on 5.4, but here on the slide, it's corrected. The word optician in my packet is missing the O in 5.4. But here on your slide, it's spelled correctly.
great. All right. So in process 5.1, did you want to toss in the word diverse resources? Or
Yeah, I think that's a great place to add that word.
add diverse resources? Just, I don't know that it's going to have a lot of impact on the action items that the board staff executes, but it's nice to put it in.
I would propose too to just remove the word outside. Just say evaluate diverse resources.
Any thoughts from board members? Seems fine. Great. All right, great. All right. Moving on to 5.7. This is fantastic. Again, you were ahead of your time.
Yeah, we have DEI right there.
Exactly.
I mentioned it earlier. We may want to, wordsmith this and include the word belonging. To do so, we would grammatically get rid of the word and then put a new comma after inclusion, and then say and then say belonging. I just think it's consistent with our existing effort on the CE proposal, which is DEIB. So.
Right. All right. Any thoughts on specifics that you want us to make note of as you are directing your executive officer and staff to complete this? Okay. All right. Fair enough. Moving on. Right. Okay. So this is the children's vision, health, and wellness.
Yeah, so for the members, I think we have stated that this one is not yet started. Admittedly, as I mentioned earlier, this board did engage in an effort to get a video created, which we did disseminate on this topic. This all predates my time, and so I'm not frankly sure if that's what was intended, the video in terms of this item. If that was what we meant by develop the communication plan. That might be one aspect of developing such a communication plan, producing a video, which again, we did do, but there may be more to do here. And I understand this has been a very important issue for this board, both in prior times as well as today. So it's for that reason that we say not yet started, although again, there has been at least something done in terms of a video.
And as I was preparing for this, I just kind of jotted a couple of potential notes. Is there any way of particularly focusing on unhoused children or unschooled children if it's a part of the school structure, languages?
That's very interesting that you bring that up. Because earlier this year, one of the bills that we talked about as a board, I believe it was SB 457, dealt with this issue in a certain way. The law, until 457 was signed, said that emancipated minors could access dental and medical care. Some had interpreted medical care to not include optometry or vision care. And so a legislative effort was commenced in SB 457 to make clear that those individuals, that population of people do have the ability to access that care. So to your point, there has been something recent in optometry that we looked at regarding that.
And similar to Dr. Wong's distinction between, is this going to happen as a part of the school system or is this going to happen outside the school system? And if it happens within the school system, that's great because it captures most kids, but is there anything you want to particularly mention to the executive officer and staff about keep in mind unschooled children, migrant, transitory children? Is there anything DEI related about foreign languages or partnering with community resources, community assistance groups? Those are the sorts of things you could mention if you choose to ask for those to be prioritized. But we don't want to get too specific in the objective phrase, but it's just an opportunity to leave a placeholder note if you choose to for the board staff. Okay. All right. So we did have a couple of placeholders under outreach. Talking about the live interactive CE being available. There is some impression that people who took the survey at least did not realize that was an option. Is that an objective you want to specifically include in your strategic plan, that you're going to make an effort to make licensees aware of this option for their continuing education?
Before the board perhaps answers that question, I think that was our goal in 5.3. And I think 5.3 was one of the ones that we said was completed. 5.3 is collaborate with continuing education providers and associations to disseminate updates to legislation and regulations. And as I mentioned earlier, we've done exactly that. So I think that's why we said 5.3 was completed. But the way I view these things, and probably perhaps the way the board views them as well, is that outreach should be ongoing. It's not a check the box one time and you're done. So while we said it was completed, that doesn't mean that we don't continue to disseminate information and message around the change.
And is there any indication, I mean, that specific item in your previous strategic plan had been accomplished, but apparently the survey takers in August didn't realize. And so is that proof in itself that something more should be done? Or is it just sort of an ongoing, we'll be sure to put this on all the CE forms and the renewal forms, be sure to highlight it in the newsletters and things, and does it need an objective, or is it not really rise to that level?
And Member Kleppa here, given the fact that, as indicated, we've had some people who weren't aware of it, it may need to be reemphasized in some way.
Yeah.
So if a goal, not necessarily a goal, an objective will get us there, maybe it's something to consider adding.
And it's currently on our FAQ
Yeah.
on the website. Yeah. So
Yeah.
maybe we put it in a more prominent spot on the website. So for those licensees who are not sure about this fact, they can find it easily.
I might then propose to just bring back 5.3 and pretend, I don't want to say pretend, but we can say it's not completed or in progress, right? Because it's something, as I mentioned, we should continue to do that, right? There are new licensees coming into the profession every month, right? And so they may not know about a message that was disseminated on a listserv 3 months prior, for example. So it's something that we continue to do. As President Wong mentioned in her initial opening remarks, sort of setting the table for this entire item 5 that we're discussing. Myself and staff are putting together a list of CE topics in DEI. I think as part of that message that we intend to disseminate in the first quarter of 2024, we can include again the revisions that happened in August this year to the CE requirements. So another opportunity to provide that outreach.
And then as a sort of a cautionary note too, I have heard, and in every strategic planning session I hold, they say, oh yeah, the information's on the website.
Yeah.
Is it really easy to find? Do you have to go back into the meeting minutes from the one meeting and where it began to find it? So, just sort of in renewal materials, is it clear what your CE requirements are, that sort of thing? So, again, do you feel like you'd rather just add that to 5.3? Or do you think it rise? No, just.
Well, I don't know if I follow obviously with the will of the board here, but I think my perspective would be that I don't know what we would need to add to 5.3. I think if we just say that 5.3 is in progress and not completed, I think 5.3 encompasses everything that the members are talking about. Collaborate with CE providers and associations to disseminate updates to legislation and regulations regarding the current state of practice. I think that's pretty encompassing to this item. Yeah.
Okay. So we've got that noted. Our other placeholder item was this process of, so publicizing to licensees, the public, renewing licensees, which items are and are not, should not hold them back from participating in the profession. Where would you like, where do you see a need to go with this? What would you like to see?
The difficult part here for staff is that we don't prejudge anything, right? Under 480, Business and Professions Code 480, there's no criminal conviction for which you are automatically disqualified for licensure. There are other boards and bureaus at DCA that do have that. We are not one of them. So there is no example that we could give you. If you are convicted in X crime, you'll never get a license. We would be violating the law if we said that. That individual, in whatever that crime or whatever that conviction was, might have rehabilitation evidence to provide. And under 480, we have to consider that. So we have to be very careful, I think, about how we proceed with this one, because we can't publish a list, for example, of things that we care about or don't care about, right? A DUI, just to use that as an example, may or may not be substantially related. It all depends on the specific individual facts of that case. So as I mentioned, we have an FAQ to really kind of help inform potential applicants and licensees about this. And when I speak publicly at the schools or in other places, I say it in exactly the way I just said it here, which is, again, there is no conviction that is automatically disqualifying. We have to review that and look at that. And pursuant to that process, a decision will be made. So consideration of certain past offenses that are, I don't know how you determine or publish something like that.
Right, and my thought is from a diversity inclusion perspective would be, are there people who never even applied because they assumed that their tax fraud conviction blackballed them from everything in the world? Do you want to get that word out to them?
At another board in DCA, it might, but here it wouldn't.
Right.
And so again, that's why I've been saying it in that way. We don't know what we don't know until we have an application, right? And so you have to apply for us to be able to evaluate it.
So I think there might be an opportunity potentially for language on the application page, information for applicants. But that might also be minutia that doesn't rise to the level of being included in the strategic plan.
Possibly. So again, pursuant to 480, Business and Professions 480, applications did have to change. Conviction questions are optional, for example, now. So in many respects, we've maybe done some of this work.
Okay, so you think the material is adequately covered and perhaps this new objective might not be necessary? Right. Okay, so as a board member, you would say that we don't need a new objective to cover this material? Okay. Do others agree that this is unnecessary? Getting a couple nods.
Everything's on a case-by-case basis. So I think listing individual items would defeat the purpose. So
Right, but in general, an outreach
Yep.
plan to describe the concept to applicants, that doesn't rise to the
No.
level of strategic plan
No,
material?
and I think what we have under our FAQs on the website is sufficient at this point, so.
To just maybe put a little bit finer kind of button on it, the genesis of the FAQ that we are talking about here, the reason why we did it and produced it was because an outside entity had written a letter to the department pointing out certain programs within the department that they felt were doing a good job in terms of disseminating information regarding AB 2138 and Business and Professions Code 480, and obviously the inverse of that, programs that they thought maybe had some room for improvement. We talked about this at an earlier board meeting this year, maybe the March meeting. Our board was not named in either of those two categories, thankfully, but we took it as an opportunity to do something positive, right? Which was producing the FAQ to get information out. Again, not something that we deal with a whole lot of compared to other boards in terms of applicants or licensees presenting with criminal or conviction history. We certainly deal with it, but there are other programs that deal with it a lot more. So that's really why we did the FAQ was pursuant to that opportunity, if you will, that arose from that letter earlier this year.
Sounds good. So anything else under outreach that you think needs to be added to highlight DEIB issues? Shall I go ahead and go out for public comment?
I have a couple I'd like to consider before we move on.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if it goes here or where it would go, but there was a discussion on mentorship in some of the responses we received. And I would like to see if that's something the board could explore, fostering a mentorship program with experienced licensees mentoring new admittees to the profession. So that would be an outreach to licensees. And then we've already seen our executive director does outreach to various schools, which of course should be encouraged to continue. I don't know if it's something that the board would necessarily want to get involved in directly, but that is something we could consider if that would be useful, because I think we've had commentary encouraging us to come to conferences and the like. So that might be something we want to consider as board members.
Was that separate from the mentorship concept?
Yes, second
Okay, just making
concept.
sure. Thank you.
And then the third thing would be, and I hesitate the word marketing, but materials that better communicate what this board does and how it does what it does to people who may not yet have considered joining the profession, whether it's through junior colleges or high schools or wherever best recruitment might occur. We may consider developing some sort of common generic materials to provide to those entities so they in turn can talk to their students. about what the board does and get people thinking about joining a profession they may not have considered in the past. So those are the three that come to mind for me.
All right, great, thank you. I certainly would defer to the board if you have input, but just, I have heard the concept of the marketing thing before with a number of other boards, especially ones that are facing workforce shortages. And there is a great deal of discussion about whether this is the board's role or whether this is the role of a professional association. And so I just would sort of put that out there as a cautionary statement that consumer protection is very much our mandate, and anything after that is optional. But so did anyone here want to talk about or approach whether the mentorship program is something that might be an objective for your strategic plan?
I'm in agreement with you. I think in general, mentorship is something that would be more with a professional association. The state board is for consumer protection and unfortunately not for mentorship. So
Okay.
I think COA, well, Christine's not here, but they could look more into mentorship programs.
Okay.
I would say that, I think it's been my experience in the past year that I've been in this role that a lot of the associations are doing a lot of really good work in this area. As it pertains to COA, for example, they have what they call a new OD boot camp. And they've outreach to myself, and I've participated in a couple events with them. These are folks that are already in school, however, right? They're already a captive audience, if you will, in terms of their interest in optometry. I'm not sure if this should be a board-led effort, but I think there's a role for the board to partner with organizations that have a more natural interest in doing this work and are doing this work. Similarly, with COA, we've been participating in events with the California State Society for Opticians, and they're doing a lot of really exciting work on this pipeline of new opticians specifically. That takes the form of different models, especially in opticianry. Some of those programs are more experience apprenticeship based. Some of them are more certificate/degree based. But we partner with them on those efforts as well. One of the things we specifically did in that area was update the optician student program brochure to provide more accurate and clear information. We outreached it to working with the California State Society for Opticians, e-distributed it to all of the optician programs in California, and then mailed it physically to those that also were interested. So I think our role is more in that partnership and support role, perhaps, and maybe less in leading these efforts. But we're absolutely interested, I think, in continuing to do that work and partnering with those two organizations and perhaps others.
Okay. So on the mentorship, do the rest of the board members agree that this is perhaps not the role of the board to include in something like a strategic plan? Got a couple of nods. Elizabeth?
Question, in hearing what Executive Officer Gregory was mentioning, were you suggesting a objective to partner and support these organizations? Or no? Okay.
No, I'm not suggesting a new specific objective here. I think a lot of it is already probably contained in some of them. For example, 5.3. We do this work with collaborating with associations, but by no means are we doing it perfectly or as much of it as we can, right? I think there's a lot more opportunity to do this work, to do this outreach, to do this partnership with those that are on the sort of front lines, if you will, already engaged in those areas.
Okay, so back to Anne, should we delete this line item?
And certainly, notes have been taken about the desire to have board staff be supportive, but again, and I guess Member Kleppa, since it came from you, is this something you feel rises to the importance of being mentioned in the strategic plan as an objective?
Well, as noted by the executive director, partnering may be a better term than creating. If these mentorship programs already exist in outside organizations, I think the board can certainly support them. And I think that might be a way of expressing it that may better show what we're attempting to achieve. So if that's not something that should be in the plan as it stands, then it's fine to delete it. I simply think a mentorship program is important to be helped along in any way possible for anyone entering a new profession.
Right. Okay, great, thank you. So I think we're seeing unified feeling that that's not to the level of a strategic plan item. Similarly with attending conferences, and is that something that is a generalized note, but perhaps not rising to the level of being in the plan?
Just to be very blunt about it, I think that's the job of every executive officer. And if I'm not attending, or this board is not attending when possible, these types of events, then we're missing some huge opportunities to do the job that we should be doing.
So perhaps it doesn't need to be mentioned.
I don't think it
here.
needs to be as a specific objective, no.
Okay. Any other thoughts from anyone wanting to keep it? Okay. And then the third item, materials for distribution to students, but I could imagine a scenario where it would be available to the public as well, but about what the board does. Is that something that merits inclusion in the strategic plan? I think in general in California boards and bureaus, there's a lot of confusion about who does what. And in general, I think DCA can, help with that, but is it critical enough that you need to have it in your plan?
I mean, I think we've had more outreach to the schools, and I know that our executive officer has made presentations at all the optometry schools to the students so that they have a better understanding of what the board does. And since there are future optometry licensees, I think presently they understand the role of the board significantly better.
Yeah, I'm going back again just to 5.1, right? Which we're proposing to change to evaluate diverse resources available to expand outreach. And I think, again, this is an ongoing thing, right? As we are presenting to populations of students, for example, they're not all the same. So, for example, this year I presented to fourth years and I presented to first years. What they care about are very different, right? The fourth years, all they care about is how can I get licensed as fast as I can. The first year, they've been to school 3 months. So it was a very different conversation and a very different presentation. So I don't know if, certainly, again, will of the board, if they want to put a specific item here to call that out, I'm fine with that. But it may also be already in 5.1. It's something we're continuously doing, right? Refining what these materials look like, what the handouts look like, what's relevant to the audience, right, that we're going to be in front of. So, but if we want to specifically call that out, I think we can, but it may also be already sort of implied, if you will, in existing objectives.
Do other board members feel it's covered elsewhere and doesn't need a new specific?
Member Garcia, I think it is covered in 5.1. It's general enough, very broad.
And certainly, if any members want to see these materials, we can provide them.
All right. So we may be done with outreach. And do you want to go out for public comment on outreach? All right. And we do have one request for comment in person.
Just to once again say, we're going to support you. We've even got a website. And with the Children's Vision, I was just coming up with great ideas how we can encourage our students to write essays and provide them winning scholarships to give us more ideas of how we can help with children's vision. And so exactly what Executive Officer Greg Poon was saying, we do have mentorships already with our students, and it's working one because we got a lot of new apprentices that come in, and we do assign them mentors to help them. So that is working. And yes, we're going to keep reporting, updating, and letting you know what we're doing. Thanks.
Thank you, Ruby.
Fantastic. So there's no other public comment in the room. Is there any public comment online, moderator?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Wonderful. So I do see that lunch has arrived. Did you want to go ahead and take a?
I
lunch
think
break?
we should.
How long would you like to take?
If it's okay with the board members, I'd propose 30 minutes. We still have one more item here to get through, plus the rest of our agenda. Should we say 1:45?
Come back to session. Now should I say, it is now 1:45 and we are going to resume our meeting.
All right, welcome back to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Supplement to the Strategic Planning session. And we will go ahead and resume our presentation with organizational effectiveness is our goal area that we're talking about now. So as you read through the description, does this seem like it's still correct and diverse and inclusive enough? Anyone want to make edits to the goal statement definition? And hearing no suggestions, I think we can move on. All right, so we have some things that have been completed. Restructuring, we've got an in progress. Oh, that's okay. So our in progress item is arranging in-service trainings to increase staff understanding. So any thoughts on whether that should get fleshed out in any way?
Just some comments from the executive officer for members, especially some of our newer members. As is indicated here, this is in progress, open to revision. We do some of this already. We, just in my past year here, for example, we have received at least one, maybe two presentations regarding staff development from a licensee. But I think we have an opportunity to do more here. Again, in the context of DEI, there's probably more that we could do around diversifying that type of training, more outreach that we could do in that area. There's probably a big opportunity on the optician side to have a licensed optician provide some training to our staff. But also, it's important for you all to know that this is sort of periodic, right? As we have new staff team members join our board, we explore these opportunities. So as I mentioned, we've done 1 or 2 of these in the past year, but I think there's an opportunity to do more. So just wanted to give some context.
And then on the inclusion part of things, one of the things that we've been noticing in our own team practices is getting, instead of everything being top-down communication, working from the ground up. So if line staff have questions or areas that they know are always confusing, oh, which license is this? Which law regarding this? And can we go over this one more time because it doesn't make sense? That sort of stuff. Hopefully you're already including that. Is there items for the action planning generally and not rising to the level of needing to be called out? The only other thing is, jargon and lingo from the profession and making sure that staff members who are asked questions are really familiar with all the different terms. But I have faith that it's ongoing and I don't see any big need for change. Does anyone else have anything they want to change in 6.4?
Yeah, Member Garcia, nothing to change, but just a question. The state requires diversity training annually or so, don't they already?
It's rolling out. I don't know that there is as yet any specific requirement for a diversity training for staff, state staff.
I don't think so. Member Garcia, we have a few new staff that have recently joined our team in the past week, and I do not believe that there is a specific mandate to take training in these topics. They have to take training in sexual harassment, discrimination, I believe as well. Defensiveless driver training is a mandate. There's a couple mandated trainings, but I don't believe there's one specific to DEI.
Information security is
Information
one.
security, yeah.
Ethics is one for board members and executive officers, but yeah, nothing yet. Any revisions to 6.4? Shall we move on? Moving on. Okay. And then visits to professional practices. Again, same caveats. To be inclusive, ask staff what they would like fleshed out. Any thoughts on whether practice in different regions is significantly different? I would assume that there would be an equal interest in visiting an underserved population to see what practitioners are doing when they're scraping by with no supplies and no funding versus a high-end cosmetic surgery sort of a thing. But those, again, are probably at the level of action planning from staff and not board directive at the level of strategic plan. But is there anything that comes to mind for anyone about site visits for staff to gain understandings?
I would just say, from my perspective, I know that this is something that some members of this board have spoken up on in the past, I think including most recently at the August meeting. Specific to that, there is a future, if you will, opportunity that we are exploring for staff and members to visit Sacramento City College optical program, for example. That's something that's not ready to occur yet. But that's something that is being talked about and discussed. So again, I think this is kind of like an ongoing item, right? As we have new members and new staff members come on and off the board, it's important that we arrange these visits. So I think we're doing some of that. At least one of our new members has participated with a professional member to sort of tour their practice and see and learn a little bit more about that. So I think we are continuing to do this work, and there's just more opportunities that we should explore.
Member Bragg, I was thinking maybe we could exchange out various to diverse optometric.
Oh, nice. Any thoughts on that, word switch? I haven't like it, so, okay, great, great. And I think especially for enforcement staff, I'm not sure how they are, assigned to that role, but if they don't have familiarity with underserved clinics, they might really benefit from seeing what the standard of care is and things like that.
Mhm.
So, wonderful. All right. Nothing is in the not yet started stage. So are there any organizational effectiveness items that occur to you that haven't been addressed theoretically that would include DEI? I mean, you've got a very diverse board, you've got a diverse staff. I think things are generally under control in this area, but does anyone have anything to add? No, I don't see anything. Shall we go out for public comment on organizational effectiveness?
Yes.
Any in-person comment? No, we have no in-person comment. Moderator, is there any online comment?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. One moment while I get the instruction slides up. There we go. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, wonderful. Well, congratulations. You have completed all the goal areas and made some good, discerning, thoughtful, and conscientious adjustments. So at this point now, we're going to go ahead, Elizabeth and I are going to go back and compile everything. We have, I believe, 2 added objectives. And so I don't think that adding 2 to your existing pool is going to require a change in the period of your strategic plan. If a group were to add, 10 new objectives, I would suggest they add a couple more years onto their plan period, but I don't think we're at that point with this group. Everyone comfortable with continuing with your current cycle?
Think so.
All right, great. And then I believe there's another PowerPoint slide. And so once we finish writing up the adjustments that we've made, you will see the draft with the supplement at your next board meeting, and then you'll vote on approving that. And then after it's approved, then we will go ahead and work with EO Prudent and staff to implement the changes, fine tune some of that. And they will be presented with an action plan tracker so that they can regularly update you all on how things are going. And then when your current plan expires, we would be delighted to work with you again as Solid to create a new one. Are there any questions, any feedback?
Well, first, just thank you. Thank you to both of you, Ann and Elizabeth, and all of DCA's solid planning staff for all the work that you guys did over the last several months. I think really going back to the summer was when we first started talking about this and building toward this moment. So really, really appreciate both of you doing that. The only question that I have is just, I know we made some revisions earlier in the meeting to our meeting calendar, and we actually bumped it up by a couple weeks, is whether you all anticipate that February date being workable for you all, or if we're thinking maybe in the May meeting.
Anticipate any problem?
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, our edits at this stage of the game usually only take a couple of weeks.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And
Yes.
we've put our contact information up. If anyone has anything they'd like to add or any comments on how we can do better for you next time, would appreciate your comments.
No, thank you to both of you. We really appreciate all the support that
You're
you've
welcome.
given us. All right, so we are now going to move on to item number 6, which is discussion and possible action on Department of Consumer Affairs update. We would like this. Okay, good. So we have Corinna Moreno from the Department of Consumer Affairs Executive Office, who is going to provide the board with the DC update.
Good afternoon. My name is Karina Moreno of the Department of Consumer Affairs, and I thank you for the opportunity to join you today. I also want to thank all members who serve to protect the public. First, we have the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency update. On November 28th, Governor Newsom appointed Tamika Moss as Secretary of the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. Secretary Moss has been the founder and CEO of All Homes since 2019 and previously served as the CEO of Hamilton Families from 2017 to 2019. Secretary Moss was Chief of Staff in the Oakland Mayor's Office from 2015 to 2017, Executive Director of Hope SF in San Francisco's Mayor's Office from 2013 to 2015, and is the Board President of the Nonprofit Housing Association of Northern California. We extend a warm welcome to Secretary Moss and look forward to working with her. Next is the DEI update. On November 7th, the University of Massachusetts consultant Christopher Veal provided a virtual training entitled DEI Dialogue for Leaders to 173 DCA managers, supervisors, and leaders. Veal's training covered psychological safety and how it affects these conversations, as well as interactive discussions about the challenges that leaders are facing. Participants were given a training survey and feedback was extremely positive. The DEI Steering Committee will hold its quarterly meeting on December 15th. The committee will review a draft DEI Internet webpage that is currently being developed, elect a 2024 chairperson and vice chairperson, and discuss DEI training as it remains a committee priority. Once operational, the DEI Internet page will provide all DCA employees information and resources, including DEI hiring principles, which will serve as a guide for those involved in the hiring process. The DEI Steering Committee would like to continue to learn about and showcase the DEI activities of DCA's boards and bureaus. If your board has DEI efforts to share, please send them to DCA Boards and Bureau Relations. DCA continues to support DCA boards and bureaus in expanding culturally competent communications and promote the importance of meeting the needs of all California consumers, licensees, and applicants. The latest issue of DCA's Consumer Connection magazine includes articles with information important to consumers, including a feature cover story translated into 4 languages to further reach of this information. The magazine is available on DCA's homepage. Printed copies of the magazine are also available. If you would like copies, please email consumerconnection@dca.ca.gov. Next is the military portal launch. On November 29th, the department successfully launched a new process and portal in support of service members and their families following new federal and state laws passed this year. Known as the Federal Professional License Portability and State Registration Portal, this new DCA online portal will allow boards and bureaus to accept online request form from military service members and their spouses who currently hold a valid license in good standing in other state, district, or territory to register their practice in California within the same profession or vocation if they relocate to California because of military orders. This online portal will allow DCA to properly receive, track, and review requests to ensure compliance with the federal and state law. In addition, DCA's military resource webpage and board and bureau licensing webpages have been updated with federal professional license portability and state registration information. It is vital that we provide service members and their families coming to California under military orders with the highest level of customer service and assistance. DCA continues to strongly encourage all boards and bureaus to streamline internal processes, use single points of contact for military licensure requests, and process all military requests as quickly as possible. Developed and implemented completely by DCA staff, this is a huge accomplishment we are very proud of, and of the talent and teamwork that made this portal a reality. Next is in-person meetings and Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. As a reminder, DCA boards and bureaus may conduct entirely remote public meetings without noticed locations accessible to the public through December 31st, 2023, so long as the public is able to participate in the meeting remotely. Commencing on January 1st, 2024, 4 meeting options will be available pursuant to Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. Option number 1, traditional single location option. This is a meeting where the majority of the members are gathered at one publicly noticed and accessible location. No members are participating remotely, and there is no requirement to allow for remote public participation. Option number 2, traditional teleconference option. Board members are located at different publicly noted and accessible locations, and they are connected via phone or WebEx. There is no requirement to allow for remote public participation. Option number 3, new teleconference option. A majority of board members are gathered at one publicly noticed and accessible location. The extra board members above a majority can participate remotely from private non-public sites, and the meeting must allow for remote public participation. And finally, option number 4, the new advisory body teleconference option. All members of the advisory body can participate remotely from private, non-public meeting sites. The meeting must have at least one publicly noticed and accessible location where at least one board or bureau staff member is present and where the public can participate in the meeting. Additionally, the meeting must allow for remote public access. DCA encourages boards to work closely with their board councils to ensure compliance with the Open Meeting Act. Any concerns or questions, please let us know. Required board member trainings reminder. As the end of the year quickly approaches, there are 2 DCA-wide mandatory trainings that if you haven't already completed, we ask that you do so immediately. This includes the sexual harassment prevention training and information security awareness. All DCA employees and appointees, including board and advisory council members, will need to complete the sexual harassment prevention training by December 31st, 2023. Additionally, board members with assigned DCA email, dca.ca.gov, are required to complete the Information Security Awareness Fundamentals training. This training addresses your role in protecting DCA's data and information. Both the sexual harassment prevention training and information security awareness training are available in the department's learning management system. If board members need assistance accessing LMS or additional information about these trainings, please contact Board and Bureau Relations. This month is also a perfect time to make sure that you have completed all your required board member trainings and submitted your certificates of completion to your executive officer and DCA at memberrelations@dca.ca.gov. Next is the out-of-state travel update. California's restricted states travel list has been eliminated and replaced with a new public awareness project that will consult with community leaders to promote California's values of acceptance and inclusion of the LGBTQ community across the country. Over the past year, several out-of-state trips requested by boards were not authorized because the travel was to a state on a restricted travel list. Now, out-of-state travel to all states is permitted if the trip is critical to the functions and needs of the board. Out-of-state travel requests must still follow in the established process for review and approval by DCA, agency, and governor's office. For questions, please reach out to your executive officer or Board and Bureau Relations. Next is Our Promise, State Employees Giving at Work campaign. In partnership with board members, DCA will continue its tradition of generosity and caring for our communities. This year's Our Promise Giving at Work campaign is underway and runs through December 31st, 2023. Leading our efforts this year are DCA's co-chairs Monica Vargas, Deputy Director of Communications, and Yvonne Durantes, Assistant Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations. This annual campaign gives state employees, including board members, an opportunity to support nonprofits through a one-time donation or payroll deduction. These contributions make a positive impact by providing vital resources to those experiencing poverty, homelessness, food insecurity, and offer support to causes such as veterans, animals, the environment, and more. We hope you will join the state's campaign and contribute to a nonprofit or nonprofit of your choice. For additional information on how to give by December 31st, please contact Yvonne Durantes. Next is the State Employee Food Drive. The annual State Employee Food Drive started this month and runs through January 8th, 2024. In our effort to support families in need, DCA has distributed collection boxes at the following Sacramento area locations: HQ1, HQ2, Bar, CSLB, and Evergreen. Employees and board members can drop off non-perishable items in boxes for DCA to donate to a local food bank. Collection boxes will be available through January 8th, 2024. For more information on how to make a difference as part of this year's food drive and other ways to participate, please visit www.fooddrive.ca.gov. Next is the BBR Fall Newsletter. Lastly, in case you missed it, BBR sent out its 2023 Fall Newsletter, which was distributed to board presidents, vice presidents, and executive officers. The Fall Newsletter is also available online at the board member resources page on the DCA webpage. The BBR team would like to thank the board and the staff for their hard work and partnership over this past year. We look forward to 2024 and all the great work that lies ahead. Thank you for your continued service in protecting the consumers of California. I appreciate your time this afternoon and welcome any questions from the board.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
See if there's any questions.
Do board members have any questions? Mr. Klappa, do you have any questions?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
And Madam Moderator, are there any questions from the public on the phone?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. Next, we're going to move on to item 6B. We are going to have Sarah Hinkle and Harmony DeFilippo from the Department of Consumer Affairs Budget Office, who will present the budget update, and they will be joining us virtually.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that everybody can hear me.
Loud and clear.
Okay. And I am trying to share my video, so I don't know if that access or feature is allowing me to or not. So let me know
I don't think
otherwise.
you need to worry about the video because all we can see right now is what we need to see, which is the slide.
Okay. Okay, got it. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sarah Hinkle, and I am budget analyst with the DCA Budget Office. I want to thank the board and the executive staff for allowing me a few minutes to present on agenda item 6B, the board's expenditure projections and fund condition statement. Now, first, I'm going to start with the board's expenditures. Now, these projections are based on actual data through fiscal month 3, and this report includes 22-23 actual expenditures, as well as 23-24 budgeted and projected expenditures. And as we move to the end of the document, you'll see that the board had a beginning base budget of approximately $4.12 million and is projected to spend a total of $2.89 million, creating a reversion to the board's fund of $1.23 million, a reversion percentage of approximately 30%. Now, the next document I'll be going over is the board's revenue projections. And this report includes receipts collected through September and projected revenues to year end. And I'll go further into the projections as we transition to the next slide. The next slide is the board fund condition statement. And as a reminder, we read this document top to bottom and then left to right. So the left column is the board's prior year 22-23 actuals. And it shows the board began 22-23 with a beginning balance of just over $2 million. It collected $2.56 million in revenues with $346,000 from initial license fees, just over $2 million from license renewals, and $154,000 was collected from the issuance of citations, fines, delinquent fees, and other revenue. the board expended 2.9 million, which includes 197,000 in direct draws to the fund for statewide pro rata and pension payments. And the board ended 22-23 with 1.73 million reserve balance, or about 6.7 months in reserves. Now for the current year, 23-24, the board projects revenues of 2.83 million, with approximately 337,000 projected from initial license fees and 2.35 million from renewal fees and 148,000 from the issuance of citations, fines, delinquent fees, and other revenue. The board's 23-24 expenditures based on the Budget Act with FM3 projections is just over 3 million between authorized expenditures and direct draws to the fund, leaving the board with a fund balance of just under 2.73 million, or 8.3 months in reserve. Now, the Budget Office will continue to monitor the board's revenues and expenditures and report back to the board with monthly expenditures projections as we continue to close fiscal months in the current fiscal year. A few things to note of the board's fund condition. This fund condition is a snapshot in time, and one of the main factors driving expenditures increases in future years is a result of personal service adjustments, and these include general salary increases, as well as employee compensation and retirement rate adjustments. And the Budget Office includes a conservative ongoing 3% increase to expenditures on the fund condition statement to account for these ongoing incremental adjustments. And lastly, I would like to note to the board that any future legislation or unanticipated events could result in the board's need for additional resources, which would create cost pressure on the fund. Now, the board has done an excellent job of being fiscally responsible with its budget. We will continue to monitor the board's fund and provide updates to the board on a regular basis. Again, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present at today's meeting. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Do board members have any questions?
I have a question, if I may. Member Kleppa, regarding this document we just looked at, the projections. We are good for this year, good all the way through 2026, 2027, where we seem to be in a deficit situation. Is that still the projection at this point?
Yes.
All right. And is that something that is going to be addressed, hopefully, by the fee increase that we discussed at a prior meeting?
We hope that the fee proposal that is in progress addresses the structural deficit in outgoing years. We hope that the current fee proposal addresses very meaningfully. At prior board meetings this year, we have talked about the fact that the fee increase proposal that we are currently engaged in may not entirely solve that problem. But that picture will be filled in most likely over the ensuing months and perhaps a year or so. But the projection you have in front of you does not incorporate those proposed fee increases because they're not yet law.
Okay, thank you.
And Madam Moderator, can we open up?
Just one quick comment.
Ms. Linden has a question.
Member Linden, just to clarify, so the increase in expenditures from current year 23-24 to budget year 24-25, is that the idea that there's such a big difference just because what is projected to be expended may end up being less than what actually happens in practice due to, maybe certain positions not being filled and stuff like that? Just want to clarify that.
Yes, Member Linden, that's a great question. So the slide we have in front of us is the fund condition statement. I will talk in answering your question about it, as well as I believe the first slide we saw, which was the expenditure projection report. So looking at the fund condition statement, okay, sorry to confuse the moderator. Looking at the fund condition statement first, in the current year, the 3.1, I'm rounding up, it's 3,088,000. 3.1 million is what we are currently projected to spend through the remainder of the year. If you go back to the expenditure projection slide and you see in the third column, which says budget, and you go all the way down to the bottom of it, you see a 4.1. That is what we are budgeted to spend if we fully expended our budget, to your point. If we were fully staffed up, that is what the projection would look like. We would fully expend our budget. We, again, are only projected to spend about 3.1 this year because we are not fully staffed, if you will. We have not filled all of our vacant positions, and we don't intend to. So going back to the fund condition statement, in the out years would be essentially the same logic, that 3.9, 3.999, 4.1 assumes that the budget would be fully expended.
Do any other board members have questions or comments? And moderator, if you could open up the phone for comments.
As the moderator and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing no requests for public comment, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. So I wanted to thank Sarah Hinkle again from the Budget Office for presenting to us today. And on that note, we're going to move on to item number 7, which is our Executive Officer Report.
Thank you, President Wong and members. We're on agenda item 7A, Executive Officers Report, Program Update. In your packet, if you're following along in the physical materials, we're on page 82. Again, item 7A. The first item here is just to provide a staffing update to the board. We have recently filled our receptionist position, and this position has been vacant for most of the summer, so we were quite excited to finally fill this position. On behalf of the board, I just want to extend a warm welcome publicly to Deja Littles, who is our new board receptionist. She's not here physically in the room with us, but she may be listening online, so we just want to extend a warm welcome to her. We also filled recently our vacant enforcement analyst position. We had a staff retirement earlier this year, and we're very excited to now fill this position. And we do have in the room this person, and her name is Sydney Villarreal. She's waving from the audience, so hi and welcome, Sydney. We're very excited to have you be a part of our team. We also have our new assigned board counsel, Brendan Meyer, who's with us today for his first optometry board meeting. He began with DCA in September of this year, and we are very excited to build a lasting partnership with him. Another update on staffing is that recently, in the last few weeks, our board policy analyst has accepted a position with another state agency. Their last day was on November 24th of this year with our board. We've already begun the recruitment for this position, and the posting for that position closes soon. So we're very excited to fill that position and bring a new policy analyst team member online. At the back end of this item is a current organizational chart for your review. The second item, and I'm not going to go into it too deeply here, it's in your packet. I'm happy to take any questions that members have on it, but just in the interest of time with the remaining items we have, I'm just going to give a really high-level update on it. At the March and May board meetings this year, I reported to the board on our partnership with the DCA Organizational Improvement Office, OIO, and included in your packet is a mid-project status report, which you can certainly review. Again, earlier this year, we had begun this project, and what it really was about was to identify opportunities across our various units. We are organized in licensing, enforcement, and administration units within the board. And OIO began a year-long project with us to essentially review and evaluate all of the processes that those units perform, really building process maps documents that kind of walk you through start to finish on all of these processes. At that time, I believe in the May meeting, I reported more than 50 process maps we had completed at that time. Again, in your packet is a mid-year status update regarding these efforts. And most of this year focused on administration and licensing. We're going to be moving into enforcement in more detail soon. The mid-year status report has several recommendations that it offers, many of which we are either in progress on or soon will be beginning. We didn't want to wait necessarily for the report to be done before we commenced making some of these improvements. So just a few examples. Letter of verification, something you've heard me talk about before at this board. That's now on Breeze. Before it was an entirely paper process. Similarly with other license types like retired and retired volunteer, and even our immunization certification. Those are all now online. There are other Breeze changes that we hope to be exploring soon pursuant to this report. So again, in your packet is a copy of the actual mid-year report for your review. The third item here is just to provide information on some of our outreach, some of which we've already mentioned during this meeting today, but this year there's been a lot of activity nationally from federal authorities, including regarding dangerous eye drops. And we've been very active in disseminating this information in listserv and social media, as well as on our homepage. So just wanted to mention that. We also recently updated the homepage to more prominently display button links to our applications, renewals, and complaint forms. We want to better publicize and make more prominent some of this information. And so if you go to our homepage now, we have made some efforts at accomplishing that. I did want to give an update because in your packet here is information about our hope to update the homepage to include a Google Translate button. And I think we heard a little bit about Google Translate earlier today. Unfortunately, to deliver some bad news, Google Translate button is going away. Google is apparently not going to be supporting it in that way anymore. Instead, it's apparently being embedded into every website search result that populates via Google, such that you should be able to right-click on a page and then translate it. So there still will be the ability to translate web pages. There just won't be this affirmative, visible Google Translate button that many of us see on websites currently. We're also in the middle of working on our 2024 winter edition of the Spectacle, and we hope to have that out soon. Again, our policy analyst who just departed the board was, this was one of their duties. So we are doing what we can to still maintain that timeline on getting that out. I mentioned earlier that our optician program student brochure was updated and revised and distributed to all of the optician programs in California. And we're very excited about that. We've also published that on our website. And then finally, the 2024 Law and Regulations book. We have not updated our law and regulations book as a board in 3+ years. The current version that's published on our website is 2020. And so we are initiating an effort to get this book updated, and we anticipate or expect to be updating it on a yearly basis going forward. So don't have a timeline as to when that will be done yet, but we're hoping to have this book done in the first or second quarter of 2024. Happy to take any questions from members on item 7A.
Prudent, is that optician program brochure also online?
Yes.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions from members of the board? Mr. Kleppa, do you have any comments or questions?
Surprisingly, no.
Are there any public comments from those in the audience? No hands are raised. And Madam Moderator, if you could see if there's any public comments from those on the phone.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. I think we're going to move on to item 7B, which is our enforcement program report. And I believe Jolie Walker is going to join Gregory Bruden to talk about the enforcement program.
Hello. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. As you heard from Gregory, at the end of May, we had our enforcement analyst retired. And so now we have Sydney. And Sydney just began this week. So she's brand new and we're happy to have her. She has experience with DCA from the Veterinary Medical Board, the Contractor State Licensing Board, and she just recently came from the Horse Racing Board. And she will be working the more complex consumer complaints, GFI referrals, and working with the Attorney General's office. She will also be assisting with the board's statistical reporting. Speaking of statistics, they are included. We are providing the priority category of complaints ranging from urgent to routine. And that information is on the attachment 6BI for both optometry and opticianry. The probation stats are also included. And there are currently a total of 7 licensees on probation. Of these, 1 probationer is told and not receiving credit towards the completion of probation. 1 licensee successfully completed probation, and a petition to revoke probation was filed against 1 licensee for noncompliance of probation. Continuing education audit stats are included, and they are attachment 6BII. 13 audits have been completed in the quarter, and of the 13 completed, the statistics show that 62% have passed, 5 failed, 8 passed. And included are also all the actions that were taken by the board for quarter 1.
Thank you, Jolie. I know Member Kleppa, you had asked earlier in the meeting whether there'd be some information shared regarding some of the timelines. I'm happy to give some of that information now. So we'll be referring to item 7BI. If you're looking at your physical packet, this begins on page 97 and continues from there. So the first item on 7BI is the optometry program, and then it goes to the opticianry program. So just to call out that the statistics are broken down by the 2 different programs that we have. If I recall correctly, Member Kleppa, you were particularly focused on the length of time for citations. And so if you're looking on now page 98 of the packet, you see the citation category for optometry. And fiscal year 22-23, 17 citations were issued with an average days to close of 91. And then you see next to that the present timeline for the quarter 1 statistics, where 10 have been issued, and you do see a quite sizable number there in terms of days to close. Moving to the opticianry side of the equation, beginning on page 101 of the physical packet, 22-23 were 16 citations issued for the opticianry program with 852 days to close. And then right next to that, you see quarter 1, 6 with 375 days to close. So I think, Member Kleppa, you were particularly focused on the last fiscal year numbers, 22-23, the 17 citations and 91 days to close, and the 16 citations and the 852 days to close. There are several different reasons why citations may take different amounts of time. As it pertains to optometry, of the 17 citations that were issued last year, the overwhelming majority of them were for CEs, meaning they did not initiate from a complaint. A CE citation is a much faster process, therefore, because it didn't initiate from an initial complaint that came in from a consumer, for example. Optometrists who are cited for these violations are very motivated to pay them. And so we are able to close those citations in a more quicker time frame. Additionally, there was a process change that we made over the summer regarding how we close citations. We were previously waiting for the citation to essentially be paid before we closed it. Now, not all citations are paid. Some of them will go unpaid, and then they'll be referred to the Franchise Tax Board for potential collection. We were allowing complaints to stay open basically that entire process. We now close a complaint following any length of time for appeal. So we keep it open while an appeal is an option. And once the appeal option is no longer available, we now close it. So we're not waiting until it gets to Franchise Tax Board, for example, before we close it. So those are a couple examples on the optometry side, why you see last year a much lower timeline than you did for opticianry. Now, if you look at the numbers for Q1, you actually see the opposite, right? You see that optometrist citations are taking about 200 or so days longer on average in Q1 than opticianry did. Again, this reflects a variety of different factors. We did a little bit fewer number of CE citations in Q1 than we had in prior quarters before that. Again, if CE citations are a little bit quicker, if you will, in terms of the process, if we do less of them, then our timeframes will reflect that. Several of the citations that were issued on the optometry side for this quarter were older complaints. They were older cases. And so the length of time reflects that in the average. So I hope that helps explain some additional information about lengths of time regarding citations. It's also important for the board to keep in mind that the appeal rights are not the same for the two license types. Optometrists have an appeal that's essentially twice the amount of time that an optician does. And so this can also impact the timelines. So again, those are about 3 different pieces of information to help answer why these numbers have different averages. Happy to take any further questions on this point.
Yeah, I'm happy to see that there was a significant drop in time frame for under the opticians. So that's a good thing to see. Do you, as the executive director, have a goal for how long these should take? In other words, are you informing staff of what they should be aiming for in that regard?
No, I do not have a specific goal measured in days for completing citations. These things are very fact specific and case specific. We do want to make sure that the administration of justice is timely, but we want to make sure that it's fair too. So that would be my answer for that question.
All right. Well, my thought would be that, 365 days or about a year is a good amount of time for investigation, evaluation, and hopefully a resolution. So maybe that might be a goal to consider, even though different cases will, of course, result in different outcomes, some more, some less. I think a goal should be developed based upon, average amount of time it's taking if you're diligent in pursuing these matters. Is that something that you and your staff are willing to develop and then report back to the board on?
I'll take it under advisement and report back.
Thank you.
Right, thank you, Mr. Kleppa. Are there any comments or questions from the public in the room? No hands are raised. And Madam Moderator, if you could open up the phone for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Let's go ahead and move on to item number 7, which is with Randy Love and our executive officer. I believe you're going to be talking about licensing.
Good afternoon, board members. So as you know, board staff continually work with DCA to update Breeze and improve the functionality. As I've said before, just as a reminder, updates to Breeze are put into production once a month, and each Breeze update can only include a limited number of changes. Some of these are going to sound familiar from Gregory earlier, but so far the updates for the first quarter of the fiscal year have included the ability for optometrists to apply for a letter of verification from their Breeze dashboard. We received 35 applications in the first quarter. We revised the publicly viewable disciplinary information to ensure that the status is correctly displayed. And we enabled the Breeze applications for retired optometrist and retired volunteer status, as well as allowing our optician registrants to order duplicate registrations and duplicate certificates from their Breeze dashboard. Staff is beginning a project to review and potentially revise all the letters that are distributed to applicants and licensees via Breeze. Anything that does need to be updated will need to be an individual change on Breeze. So we'll prioritize them in the order that they mostly go out in, or based on how many of them we typically send, and start spreading those changes out over subsequent Breeze release cycles. Another thing that we'll be working on is adding more mailing address functionality. We're working on getting anything that Breeze sends will go to a mailing address if there is one. And in addition to those Breeze updates, we have some statistical information. We've got 3 attachments. The first shows the number of applications received and approved by type. Attachment B shows the number of licenses by license type and license status. And then attachment C contains graphs that illustrate the number of applications processed along with the average processing time. And I am happy to take any questions on either of those items.
Any questions or comments from board members? Mr. Klappa, do you have any questions or comments?
Not right now, thank you.
Okay, and any questions or comments from members of the public in the room? And Madam Moderator, if you could open up the phone for public comment, please.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. In audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you. We're going to move on to item number 7D, which is a regulatory update with Greg Breeden.
Thank you, President Wong. Agenda item 7D, regulatory update. In your packet, physical materials, page 116 is where I am. We'll just run through these quickly and provide updates. These are previously board-approved regulatory packages. What that means is that the board has directed staff to commence work on the rulemaking. The first one is the mobile optometric office regulations. This package is in review with DCA. That's an update from your prior meeting, our prior meeting in August. We are hopeful to get that back from DCA soon, and we will commence with the rulemaking process from there. The CE regulations, as we talked about, were effective August 23rd of this year. The third item is implementation of AB 458. This is what we refer to internally as the home residence permit. Staff has prepared a draft of this regulatory package, which is in review with me at the moment. The fourth item is optometry disciplinary guidelines. This package is still under preparation, has not been formally submitted by staff to me yet for review. Fifth item is the optician program omnibus regulatory changes. I made mention earlier in the meeting to this item. This rulemaking package will need to come back to the board for revision. The fees component of this package were taken out, separated, and became part of our fee regulation that we're presently engaged on. So item 5 will need to have some changes and come back to the board. Item number 6 is the dispensing optician disciplinary guidelines. This package was submitted to DCA Legal in this month, so we're making progress on that package as well, and hopeful that one will commence to rulemaking formal stages in the new year. Item 7 is requirements for glaucoma certification. We have not yet started this rulemaking. And then item 8 is fees, and fees were noticed on September 15th for a 45-day comment period, which ended on Halloween. We received no adverse comments and immediately moved to finalize the package. The package is currently with OAL, Office of Administrative Law. We expect a final decision on that package by the end of this year. That is your rulemaking update for item 7D. Happy to take any questions from members.
One question, Member Klappa, on the fees. This is to, if I remember a previous discussion, this idea is to max out what we are currently allowed under statute to charge licensees. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So this isn't the raising of that limit that will require separate legislation, right?
No, it is not. That would require a study and then subsequent legislation.
Okay. And that second process you just described, is that started yet? Is that something that we can begin or no?
No, we have not started it yet. I don't believe that we're ready to.
Okay, fair enough.
Any comments from?
This is Member Linden. I just want to say thank you to you and staff for making so much progress on all these regulatory packages. It's really been tremendous. So thank you all for your hard work.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other comments from board members? Comments or questions from members of the public in the room? No hands raised. And if, Madam Moderator, if you could open up the phone for public comments.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. All right, now we're moving on to agenda item number 8, discussion and possible action on 2023 legislation. This is me with Executive Officer Gregory Pruden.
Thank you, President Wong. Agenda item 8, discussion and possible action on 2023 legislation. Although I will say at the outset that I do not anticipate us actually needing to take any action on any of these items. The first legislative item, and again, these are bills that were presented to the board this year and for which we took positions on. The first one is AB 1028, by McKinner, reporting of crimes, mandated reporters. We updated our position at the August meeting to neutral. This bill is was held on the Senate Appropriations suspense file. It will be coming back in 2024. So there's no action anticipated for us at the moment on this. Again, our position is neutral. The bill is currently held in the Senate Appropriations suspense file. Moving on, the next bill is AB 1570 by Lowe, Optometry Certification to Perform Advanced Procedures. Our board position on this bill is support if amended. We have implementation concerns around cost mostly. Much like AB 1028, this bill is still moving, it's still alive. We've had some productive conversations, staff level, with the California Optometric Association. We've exchanged some productive ideas to reduce some of these impacts. There are going to be some further conversations expected in the new year. This bill will have a really aggressive timeline to move forward in 2024. The legislature will come back around January 3rd, and it will need to move by January 12th. So we will see what happens with this bill in the new year. We look forward to engaging with more substantive amendments on this bill at the February and May meetings of 2024. And no action at this time. The next bill on our list, and I am on page 168 of the physical packet, is AB 1707 by Pacheco, Health Professionals and Facilities, Adverse Actions Based on Another State's Law. Our board position was support, and happy to let the board know that the bill was signed into law on September 27th, 2023. Takes effect on January 1st of the new year. It prohibits our board and all healing arts boards under DCA from denying an application or imposing discipline on a licensee solely on the basis of a civil judgment, criminal conviction, or disciplinary action in another state that is based on the application of another state's law that interferes with a person's right to receive care that would be lawful in California. As a reminder for the board, this bill really was targeted at providing protections for people who provide abortion and other gender care services, not something that our licensees are too involved in, but we felt it was important to show support. And so we took a support position, again, signed into law on September 27th. The next bill to bring forward is SB 340 by Eggman, Medi-Cal Eyeglasses, Prison Industry Authority. There is no update that has changed from the August meeting. This bill is still a 2-year bill. According to the author's office, they are going to attempt a narrower approach in 2024, given to concerns expressed by the Department of Healthcare Services. Our board position is support. We will be looking forward to see how this bill changes in the new year. No action at this time. The next bill to bring forward is SB 457 by Menjivar, Vision Care Consent by a Minor. I had mentioned this earlier in the context of our strategic planning session. This bill was supported by the board. It was signed into law on September 1st, 2023. The bill would authorize minors not living with their parents or guardians to consent to their own vision care and would authorize an optometrist to advise the parent or guardian under the same conditions applicable to the provision of medical and dental care. The bill also includes a definition of vision care, which is very similar to language that exists in our Practice Act. Again, the bill was signed into law September 1st of this year and takes effect on January 1st of the new year. Finally, we have SB 544 by Laird, Bagley Keene, Open Meeting Act, teleconferencing, excuse me. We were in support of this bill, and this bill was signed into law on September 22nd, 2023. We're very fortunate to just a moment ago have a pretty substantive update from the DCA exec office on the changes contained in this bill. The main, I think, beneficial change for boards like ourselves is the increased flexibility for teleconferencing for committee meetings. As we heard earlier today from DCA exec, in the new year, committee meetings can meet remotely with board members entirely remote, provided there is a publicly accessible location where at least one staff member is located. I anticipate that the committees will be taking advantage of that, and I will be the fortunate staff member showing up at a public spot so that you all can do that, and I'm very happy to do that. So that is, I think, the main beneficial increase flexibility on that bill. It does preserve the existing teleconference ability for boards and introduces a sort of a new one, if you will, where 50% or more of the members are in one location, other members can be remote. So again, this bill was supported by us, signed into law on September 22nd, 2023, and takes effect on January 1st of 2024. I believe that is the last bill to provide updates on at this time. Happy to take any questions from members on any of the items in item 8.
Any questions for members?
One question, if I may, on the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, which is the one that most interested me, though they're all important. That final option you just described about one person present at a public location and other participants being remote, that only applies to committee meetings and not the whole board meeting. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So those other 3 options that the young lady described, those apply to board meetings or committee meetings, right?
I'm kind of looking at council because I'm not sure about the or part of your question. The first part of your question is correct. It does apply to the board meetings. Whether it applies also to the committee meetings, I'm not sure of.
So it does apply to the committee meetings as well.
Okay, thank you.
So the board can use all 4 options for committee meetings.
Any other
That's all I
questions?
had. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of the board? Thank you for offering to be the person on site, Mr. Pruden. Any questions or comments from the public in the room? And Madam Moderator, if you could open up the phone for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you. Let's go ahead and move on to item number 9, which is future agenda items. Are there any items the members wish to bring up for discussion as a future agenda item?
I do have one, but I've been talking a lot today, so I want to give others a chance first.
Well, I'm looking at the room and no other board members have their hands raised. So Mr. Kleppa, I turn it over to you.
Thank you. My only request would be for the board to consider exploring supporting in some way, possibly a iframe donation program, such as what Costco does, so that we could foster it for all professionals in the field to help, financially less fortunate individuals obtain eyeglass frames at a reduced or no cost option. That's something I'd like the board to explore at a future meeting if we can.
I know we can't discuss it now, but I think I can safely respond that we'd be happy to come back at a future board meeting with some research and information on that topic, Member Kleppa.
Thank you.
Any other comments from our board members? Comments from anyone in the audience? I have Ruby Garcia coming to the front.
Just wanted to thank the board very much for allowing the opticians to still have a voice somehow, but we want to see if the dispensing optician program can come back. No pressure, at least we're here to try to sustain our voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruby. And just to respond by giving a public shout out or call out is probably a better phrase here. Anybody who may be listening, who may be interested in joining the board, we have openings, including on the dispensing optician committee, which you just mentioned. So that committee is not able to meet because we have no members on it. We would welcome anybody who's interested, who happens to be a licensed optician, to get in contact with the board. You can send an email to optometry@dca.ca.gov, and we will review that information and go from there.
Right, there are no other comments from members, from those in the audience here. Madam Moderator, if you could open up the phones for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you. All right, we're now going to move on to item number 10, which is closed session. The board will go into closed session, and then we will return from closed session to entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Before we move to closed session, I'd like to make a note that the board will not be discussing case number LACV 23-02068-MEMF-marks in closed session today. Instead, our attorney, Brendan Meyer, has provided the board members a memo summarizing the matter. As a reminder to board members should not discuss the matter amongst themselves, but may individually contact Mr. Meyer if they have any questions. Any other comments? We are now going to move into a closed session. Thank you. So we're now back in open session? Yep. Okay, we are now going to adjourn. Thank you.